1531. In the midst of nascent Mexico, the world was divided. But on Tepeyac Hill, in an encounter that defied history, a humble Chichimeca Indian became the messenger of heaven. He, Juan Diego Cuauhtlatoatzin, now Saint Juan Diego, witnessed an apparition so luminous that it would seal the fate of a nation, the Virgin of Guadalupe. His proof was not a simple word, but an image miraculously imprinted on a coarse cloak made of maguey fibers, a piece of cloth that, to this day, is the most examined and venerated canvas on the planet. From the stars on her mantle to the color of her skin, every detail of her figure, her face, her posture, her clothing, is laden with pre-Hispanic codes and divine symbolism. How could such a complex image appear on such a fragile fabric? What secrets does science hold behind the mystery of her eyes? And how, from that miracle, was one of the most intense and moving religious fervors in human history forged? In this video, we will delve into the heart of faith to unveil the deepest mysteries associated with Mexico's most influential spiritual figure. But before we dive into this epic story, we invite you to be part of our community. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode of these narratives that shape our world. Let's begin this journey into the inexplicable. In the early years of the 16th century, the world we now know as Mexico was undergoing an enormous transformation. Less than a decade earlier, the Mexican Empire had fallen, and with it, the political, religious, and social structures that had shaped indigenous life for centuries. The lands of Anahuac, which once resounded with drums, ceremonies, and ancestral songs, now heard, mixed with the sound of the wind, the Latin prayers of the newly arrived Franciscan, Dominican, and Augustinian friars. It was a time of encounters and misunderstandings, of pain from war, of doubt, of cultural mixing, of attempts to understand a new world. Among the Spaniards, there was concern about evangelization. Among the indigenous people, confusion and resistance. The population had declined dramatically due to unknown diseases. Many peoples tried to maintain their traditions, while at the same time understanding the new faith that was being proclaimed. In this difficult setting lived a simple man named Juan Diego Cuauhtlatoatzin. He was born in 1474 in Tenochtitlan, many years before the arrival of the Spanish, and grew up within the religious world of his ancestors. He was educated in his Nahuatl language, familiar with its symbols, its gods, and its way of understanding the universe. When the missionaries arrived and began teaching Christianity, Juan Diego, now an adult and married, decided to embrace the new faith, moved by a sincere desire to follow God's will. He was a humble man. He was not a nobleman, a warrior, or a politician. He was a peasant who worked with maguey fibers to make cloaks and who walked miles to learn Christian doctrine. According to tradition, his heart was upright, kind, and sensitive. Every morning, Juan Diego set out on a long 14-mile journey to Tlatelolco, where he received catechesis. His steadfastness in the faith and his long pilgrimage to learn Christian doctrine already distinguished him among the converts. His route passed by Tepeyac Hill, an ancient place surrounded by religious memories for the indigenous peoples, as Tenantzin, the mother of the gods, had been worshipped there centuries ago. It was a quiet hill covered with prickly pears and bushes, with small paths between the rocks. On December 9, 1531, as the light of dawn began to filter through the mountains, Juan Diego heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A soft, melodious voice, unlike any sound he had ever heard before, It called him by name, using affectionate diminutives as mothers did in his language, Juan Diego. Surprised, Juan Diego looked up and saw something he could never erase from his memory. There was a woman surrounded by a light that was not of this world, a warm, golden light that seemed to breathe. Her face was young, mixed race in appearance, serene, and she wore a pink tunic and a turquoise blue cloak covered with bright stars. She was not alone. The ground where her feet stood shone as if it were an eternal sunrise. Juan Diego felt such a deep peace that tears came to his eyes, without him noticing. The woman spoke to him tenderly, as if she had known him forever. She told him that she was the mother of the true God, for whom we live, the creator of the universe, the Lord of heaven and earth. She asked him to go to the Bishop of Mexico, Fray Juan de Zumarraga, and deliver a clear message. She wanted a temple to be built on that site to show her love, listen to the lamentations of her children, and give comfort, protection, and hope. Juan Diego accepted immediately. For him, that presence left no room for doubt. He went down the hill and walked toward the center of the city. He arrived tired, but after a long wait he was finally received. The bishop listened to him, but although he was impressed by his sincerity, he told him that he needed a sign, something to confirm that this request really came from heaven and was not the result of wishful thinking. Juan Diego returned to Tepeyac sadly, fearing that he would not believe him. But the lady was waiting for him. She looked at him with the same tenderness and assured him that she would return the next day to give him instructions. However, the following morning, Juan Diego did not arrive. It was a day of anguish. His uncle, Juan Bernardino, had fallen seriously ill. Juan Diego was convinced that his uncle was going to die, so he decided to look for a priest to give him the sacraments. Therefore, he took a different route to avoid meeting the lady. His heart was divided. He wanted to obey her, but he feared losing his uncle. The Virgin suddenly appeared on the road, intercepting him. Juan Diego, ashamed, tried to explain that he had not meant to disobey her. The lady looked at him with love and said a phrase that has remained engraved in the memory of generations, "Am I not here? Who am your mother?" With these words, she calmed his fears and assured him that his uncle was already healed. Then she asked him to climb to the top of the hill and gather the flowers he would find there. Juan Diego obeyed. It was December, a harsh season in that terrain. The hill was dry, cold, without fresh vegetation. And yet, when he reached the top, he saw a miracle, a garden of Castilian roses, flowers that not only did not grow in that season, but were also foreign to the region. Juan Diego carefully picked them and carried them in his cloak, holding it against his chest like a fragile treasure. From that day on, Juan Diego's cloak became one of the most extraordinary relics in history. When he arrived before the bishop, he opened his cloak. The roses fell to the ground. But what left everyone speechless was not the flowers, but the image that appeared on the cloth, the complete figure of the Virgin, exactly as Juan Diego had seen her, an image that seemed to be painted by light. The bishop fell to his knees. Those present wept with emotion. From that day on, Juan Diego's cloak became one of the most extraordinary relics in history. The 5-Century Challenge, the 7 unexplained mysteries. Over the centuries, scientists, artists, and scholars from different eras have analyzed the tilma. The fabric, made of I-8 agave fibers, should have disintegrated in 20 or 30 years. But it has survived for almost 5 centuries, without breaking, losing color, or significant deterioration. This is just the beginning of the amazement, we present the 7 great phenomena that science has documented but, to this day, cannot explain. 1. The mystery that defies science, an impossible canvas. To understand the magnitude of the message, we must first look at the tilma itself. This piece of I-8, made from maguey fibers, was the equivalent of a waste fabric in the 16th century. Textile experts are unanimous. A fabric of this quality should not have lasted more than 20 or 40 years before disintegrating due to humidity, heat, and constant use. However, this canvas has withstood nearly 5 centuries of exposure, handling, and adverse environmental conditions, defying all natural laws of organic degradation. The tilma is, materially speaking, a relic that should not exist. 2. Inexplicable nature of the image. NASA specialists. The inexplicable does not end with the fabric. Over the centuries, the image has been subjected to the most rigorous analysis, from an artist's magnifying glass to the technology of an electron microscope. The conclusion, for many, is astonishing. The image has neither the imprimatura, preparation layer, nor the protective varnishes that any 16th century painter would have applied to his work. It is as if the color were suspended above the fibers without penetrating them, floating on the surface. In 1979, scientists Jody Brant Smith and Philip Callahan, infrared specialists at NASA, concluded that the colors could not be identified with any pigments known on Earth, rejecting the explanation of a human painting. It is an image that remains alive without obeying the rules of painting. Who or what could paint with such perfection and in such a lasting way without leaving a trace of human technique? This is the first great miracle of persistence that calls us to faith. 3. The eyes that reflect the miracle, the ocular test. The mystery of the Virgin's eyes is perhaps the most concrete and astonishing proof for skeptics. In 1979, Peruvian engineer José Astonishing used digital processing technology for satellite images to study the Virgin's pupils, which measure just a few millimeters. What he discovered is a phenomenon that seems scientifically impossible. When he magnified the eyes thousands of times, he found microscopic images of the 13 people who, according to history, were present at the exact moment when Juan Diego unfolded the tilma before Bishop Zumarraga. These 13 figures are reflected in both of the Virgin's eyes, with the precise geometric distortion that occurs when a human eye reflects an object in front of it, the Purkinje-Sanson phenomenon. This is not an abstract painting, but a photorealistic testimony captured at the moment the miracle occurred. It is as if the Virgin had taken a divine photograph of the moment, revealing the bishop, Juan Diego, an African slave, the servants, and even a family member. The science of optics reveals the authenticity of the historical account. This tiny detail forces us to believe in what our own eyes cannot see without the aid of the most advanced technology. 4. The cosmic map of the mantle, the language of the stars. The Virgin's turquoise blue mantle is not just a beautiful garment. It is a heavenly court that speaks directly to the heart of the astronomer. This color, reserved for kings and divinity in pre-Hispanic Mexico, is dotted with 46 golden stars. Analysis by astronomical experts revealed an astonishing fact. These stars are not arranged randomly. They represent with pinpoint accuracy the main constellations visible over the Valley of Mexico in the early morning of December 12, 1531, at the precise moment of the Virgin's last appearance to Juan Diego. The cloak is a star map of the sky at the time of the miracle, with the constellation Serpens, the serpent, right at the edge. This detail transcends art. The Virgin not only came from heaven, but also brought with her cosmic proof of her visit, inscribed in a universal language that transcends Nahuatl and Latin. It is a message sealed by the cosmos itself. 5. The silent codex of her dress, the bridge of faith. Beyond science, the image is a cultural bridge between two worlds. Each element of the Virgin's clothing becomes a Nahuatl codex that any indigenous person of the 16th century could read without the need for a translator. The four-petaled flower, Nahuatl Alan. Positioned perfectly on her belly, it is not an ornament. It is the Aztec symbol of the center of the universe, the moving sun, fullness, and divinity. By placing it there, the Virgin announced that she carried within her the true creator and life itself. Her loose hair. In pre-Hispanic culture, only virgin women, or those of high nobility, wore their hair loose. The Virgin presented herself with this symbol of absolute purity. The moon under her feet. The Virgin stands on a moon. For the indigenous world, the moon and the stars represented their most revered gods, Huitzilopochtli. Her standing above them announced the arrival of a higher power. The black ribbon, tied around her waist. This ribbon was the universal symbol among noble indigenous women to announce a pregnancy. The Virgin proclaimed her divine motherhood, presenting herself not only as a deity, but as the mother who came to give birth to the true God. 6. The temperature of a living body and the beating heart in the cloak. Tests have shown that the fiber of the tilma, despite its age and fragility, maintains a constant temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is exactly the average temperature of a living human body. This phenomenon is biologically inexplicable for an inanimate object. And if all this were not enough to dispel doubt, there is a mystery that appeals to our most fundamental sense of life. When placing a stethoscope under the Virgin's belt, just above the area where her belly would be, some researchers have reported hearing a soft, rhythmic pulse. This heartbeat is recorded at a constant rate of 72 beats per minute, which is the exact heartbeat perceived in the womb of a pregnant woman, similar to that of a baby in gestation. It is as if the Mother of God were reminding us that, in that shroud, life continues to beat, and that the miracle is a living presence among us. 7. The miracle that stopped death. Dynamite. The tilma not only defied the passage of time, but also human fury. In 1921, an anarchist placed a high-powered bomb, dynamite, in a vase at the foot of the image with the intention of destroying it. The explosion was devastating. It bent a heavy bronze crucifix and shattered marble and stained glass windows within a 150-meter radius. However, the tilma, protected only by thin glass, remained completely intact. The frame was undamaged. The explosion, which should have pulverized it, left the image perfectly calm, like an echo of her own words, "Am I not here? Who am your mother? Do not be afraid." This event was not only a miracle of protection, but a powerful and historic reaffirmation of her presence. The miracle that opened the faith, new event. The tilma was taken to the old cathedral for veneration, but it was during the solemn transfer to the chapel, built on Tepeyac, that a miracle occurred that moved the crowds. During a theatrical representation of a battle, an indigenous man participating in the play was accidentally struck by a real arrow, leaving him seriously wounded, with the arrow embedded in his neck. Desperate, those present immediately took him before the sacred image of the Virgin. As soon as he was brought close to the I-8, the wound miraculously disappeared, and the man rose completely healed. This act of public healing, witnessed by Spaniards and indigenous people alike, was the final spark that ignited mass faith. The miracle not only healed a body, but also healed the doubts of thousands of souls, transforming evangelization from a duty into sincere and fervent devotion. The consequence of these apparitions was epic. In less than a decade, it is estimated that more than 9 million indigenous people were baptized into the Catholic faith. Evangelization, which had been slow and difficult, became a wave of faith never seen before. The Virgin of Guadalupe not only united the peoples, but also healed them of their despair. She spoke to them like a mother, in their language, with their symbols, at a time of profound pain. The Morenita del Tepeyac became, overnight, the banner of a new nation. The Virgin of Guadalupe became a symbol of profound identity. For the indigenous people, her face and style spoke in a language they understood. For the Spaniards, she was the mother of Christ spreading her mantle over a newly discovered land. For both, she represented a bridge between worlds. Evangelization was transformed thanks to her. Millions of indigenous people asked for baptism after hearing the story of Juan Diego and seeing the tilma. It was as if the mother of all had decided to unite wounded hearts. Juan Diego's story did not end there. His uncle confirmed that he had also seen the lady, who had appeared to him with the same light and tenderness, and had told him that her name would be Santa Maria de Guadalupe. To this day, there is debate about why that name was chosen, as it did not exist in Spanish for the indigenous people. Some suggest that she may have said Cuauhtlatoatzin, which in Nahuatl means she who crushes the serpent, and sounded similar to the Spanish. Others believe that the Virgin chose Guadalupe to connect her with the Spanish invocation. The truth remains a mystery. The Mother's Promise. Thus, the story of the apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe is not just a tale from the past. It is a living narrative that transcends cultures, ages, languages, and generations. It is a story in which a simple man becomes a messenger, in which a heavenly mother offers comfort to a wounded people, in which a cloak made of humble fibers contains a message that transcends time. It is the story of an encounter that transformed an entire nation and continues to resonate today, reminding us that, in the midst of difficulties, there is always a gentle voice that continues to say, "Am I not here? I who am your mother?" The mother who waits for you. We have navigated through centuries, science, the cosmos, and faith. We have seen how a simple piece of cloth becomes a testimony that defies reason, uniting the antiquity of the maguey plant with NASA technology. Doubt is human, the search for truth is noble. But when science shows us people reflected in her eyes, when history confirms the failed explosion, and when astronomers decipher the star map on her cloak, then mystery becomes certainty. The Virgin of Guadalupe is not a legend. She is the tangible and miraculous proof of the unconditional love of God, who decided to wrap himself in mestizo skin and indigenous language to reach even the humblest of his children. And perhaps the only sadness that remains when contemplating this truth is not having known or loved her with the intensity she deserves. Not to have understood before that the voice that spoke to Juan Diego continues to whisper to us today, "Why are you distressed? Am I not here? I who am your mother?" She does not ask us for perfection, she asks us for trust. She does not ask us for explanations, she asks us for a heart. If you have felt this sadness, Or if certainty has grown in your soul upon seeing these miracles, let us know. Write in the comments your commitment to love and believe more in our Mother. Like this video if you now have zero doubts about her love, and share this message with someone who needs to feel her protection. May the blessing of the Mother of God cover you with her mantle. See you soon.